Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast, the single greatest video game podcast coming to you from the Communication Building on the campus of Southern Illinois University. This is episode 116 for Tuesday, May 27, 2025. We're going to have PlayStation price cuts, Nintendo planning a big direct for June possibly, and details on that Yakuza 0 director's cut all coming up. But first, welcome, Alicia Utecht, Mario Sanders. I'm Justin Young. How's life been?
Pretty good.
Yeah, life is good. And it's
I do my big intro, and you have the least amount of enthusiasm for life.
I said it was pretty good.
This isn't as bad as Christina a few weeks ago. I feel like I asked her, and she was like, I was like, that's so depressing.
no, I feel like I'm in mode because I'm like in that spot of like I should be working on my dissertation, I should be packing, and I'm just not.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, it's been a couple of weeks. I should probably start getting more productive with like actually doing some work over the summer.
Yeah.
I feel like if I accomplish one thing a day, I feel like I'm doing a lot during the summer. Like oh, I sent that email. Good for me.
Yeah, I haven't even been doing that. I've just been sitting and binging Thunderbolts content.
What content are you binging? Like reading the comics or?
No, watching interviews with the cast, reading fan fiction, writing fan fiction, trying to think who I can convince to come see it with me for a third time.
So, like, fan fiction, like, are people writing fan fiction of this film?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Sorry, I don't know. That's a little
it's
surprising to me because, like, that's a long-running comic book. I know with different characters largely, but, like, it's a long-running comic book, so...
Yeah, but it's just, like, people writing fan fiction for any of the MCU. You know, it's within the MCU verse. They're not necessarily drawing on the comics. You don't have to know the comics, really.
So, okay, educate me about fan fiction in this. So...
Oh, you're opening a wormhole right now.
Well, I was going to say, like, traditionally fan fiction is, the fan fiction I would say I'm familiar with, right, is like Star Wars and Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
So they were sort of like people going back and creating more adventures or filling in gaps, you know? So like people were essentially doing the EU work of Star Wars before the EU got to it. In a lot of situations.
Yeah.
The expanded universe for people listening. I knew Alicia, being a fellow nerd, would absolutely know what I was talking about there.
I apparently am not enough of a nerd.
I was going to say Mario's shaking his head now.
I appreciate your explanation of the acronym.
But Mario over here, I'm going to every baseball stadium. I'm a jock. Yeah.
Different brand of nerd.
A cool guy alert.
Just different brands of nerd.
So, like, I would imagine writing fan fiction for the MCU might prove incredibly frustrating because it is an ongoing developing universe, meaning that when we get, for example, this Fantastic Four film this summer, right? Like, that might invalidate some of the fan fiction.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of it is we all, you know, when you're reading and writing fan fiction, you kind of just have this understanding that we're working with what's available right now, and things might come out that do different things, but that's okay because it's fan fiction. It doesn't have to be true to canon. You know, people will do alternate universe, or AU is the acronym, where, like, you know, you might even have... Hey, what if we, you know, big ones when I was in like middle school were like you would take characters and like put them in the Hunger Games or like send them to Hogwarts or whatever. So like that's the beauty of fan fiction, is it doesn't have to necessarily correspond with canon. You just have to be using that world or those characters in some way.
So send characters to Hogwarts, you mean like non-Harry Potter characters?
Yeah. Yeah, you would get like...
Katniss and send her to Hogwarts?
Yeah.
Does Katniss proceed to kill all the wizards?
You know, Harry Potter is actually one of those series that I can very rarely read fan fiction for because the original is so special to me. So I'm sure there are some stories where Katniss goes to Hogwarts and ends up killing people, but
Does she have a traumatizing experience in the Triwizard Tournament?
probably.
I have a friend who teaches a course on Harry Potter, and I know like part of it is she teaches like some of the fan fiction surrounding Harry Potter, and
Oh, please tell me she teaches My Immortal.
not that I'm aware, but
Rip.
I think it's more like kind of giving them a taste of like some of the fan fiction. And I know she's talked about like some of the different series, because like people write these entire series about different characters. I mean, entire novels, not like talking about, I'm going to write my little short stories. Like,
no, there was a point where the longest piece of literature in the world was a Super Smash Bros. Brawl fan fiction. Like, fans are crazy. Said with love, as a fan, fans are crazy.
No, I mean, I just think it's kind of interesting. And I think particularly, like, she and I have talked about the fact that with Harry Potter, it's this sort of like reclaiming of that fandom, right? Because of J.K. Rowling's like hideous views and comments. And so that's always been really interesting to me, this idea, because like to some degree, I suppose some Star Wars fans have, done that. But like when I think of Star Wars fan fiction, I think of people making Star Wars stories at a time we weren't getting new movies. We weren't getting new TV shows, right?
Yeah.
Star Trek the same way, right? Like they were taking the original cast and writing new stories, new adventures for them. And it was sort of like you're not giving us this, we're going to give it ourselves.
Yeah. And that's definitely still a very active part of fandom. I mean, even looking at the Thunderbolts, in 2012 when the first Avengers movie came out, it became a trend of like you had all these stories that were the Avengers living in Avengers Tower, and Thor's obsession with Pop-Tarts, and Hawkeye's in the vents, and so like now that Thunderbolts has come out, everyone's kind of going back to that like 2012 Avengers Tower of like, we have these people who are now a team, and like maybe they could live somewhere else, but we also have Avengers Tower that they could all be living in and have to deal with that.
Well, this is like an entirely new slate of characters, right? I don't think any of the characters in Thunderbolts are in the first Avengers. Right?
No, they all were introduced.
Maybe Bucky, but I didn't know if that was afterwards.
Sebastian Stan is one of the only two actors to be in every phase of Marvel so far. But
like he's
Bucky was not in the first
Avengers.
Avengers.
Okay.
Right, he was in Captain America: The First Avenger.
I was just gonna say, I think he's got to be the longest lasting character, like the most established character in that movie.
Yeah, so he is very much exhausted dad in all the things.
But I guess I say that because I imagine that is also then exciting for fan fiction writers, is getting to explore all these new characters and getting to write them in new ways that they see fit.
Yeah, and it's so much fun, on some level people are sort of like, there's some things that people are carrying over from the old Avengers Tower fix of like, okay, now it's Ghost in the vents. And we've made Red Guardian the one obsessed with Pop-Tarts now. But then also people being like, no, this is a new team. They need new things. Did y'all not see the mid-credits scene? Red Guardian is obsessed with Wheaties, not Pop-Tarts.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fan fiction, Mario, I know you and I both saw the new Lilo and Stitch film.
Oh my gosh, Mario's face as soon as you said speaking of fan fiction was like, where is this going?
And I feel like the Disney remakes feel like sometimes bad fan fiction of people like writing their own version, correcting what they feel was wrong originally in these Disney classics.
Yeah.
So, Mario, what do you think of the new Lilo and Stitch remake?
So what I said, and I've said it to a few people, I think on its own, it is a perfectly fine movie. Like if you have no relationship to the original, you probably think that it's perfectly satisfactory. Compared to the original, I found it to be a little disappointing. I was saying this to a friend. There's something outside of maybe a couple, but I think this is actually the only live action remake from Disney that I've seen thus far. The one thing that I feel like I've heard, and this is kind of how I felt watching it, it's a little ironic sometimes that the live action remakes end up feeling really lifeless of like some sort of animated thing. And maybe that's just because in animation you can make it like even, you can like heighten that, you can embellish certain things. And like in reality, obviously you just can't have that. But I don't know. Like I said, it's not bad, but growing up loving the first one, it's a little disappointing, at least again, compared to that. That's my feeling on it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point that to some degree they feel like they're almost embarrassed to be making a film based on a cartoon, and so they want to tone down the more eccentric qualities of the film. Because one of the issues...
It's got to be like grounded in reality or like more realistic or something. It's like...
It's the same problem superhero films had in the thousands.
Yeah, we'll put them all in black
serious
leather.
Yeah, it's got to be real. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It can just be fun.
Well, I mean, to some degree, that all started with comic book films because of special effects, right?
Yeah.
Like they couldn't do the special effects, so they tried to ground it more in reality. And then, now they can do whatever they want with visual effects, so they can make it look, as outlandish as the comic books do to some degree. But yeah, I mean, one of the problems I have with this film, and like I think we talked about it, that I think this is fine. Like you said, if you have never seen the original animated film, this would be fine to take kids to.
But also, that's disappointing to hear.
Yeah.
Go watch the original animated film.
I mean, to call this movie fine when I think Lilo and Stitch is one of Disney's best films.
Yeah.
And so the original animated one.
And that's what makes it so disappointing, right?
Yeah.
It's like disheartening to have this fine movie when you've got the like original that's so good. Sorry, I think I cut you off there.
No, you're fine. But that fear of being like so outlandish and animated, right, in a non-animated film means that they took Stitch and they toned him down.
This is a movie about aliens. We got to make it we got to make it realistic.
But like, I remember sitting in the theater seeing the original Lilo and Stitch. And I remember loving that film so much because it felt like the biggest, like, it felt like it's not actually this, but like at the time it felt like somebody inside Disney giving Disney a middle finger, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to create a character that is so bad, right? That like in the very first scene, he essentially curses at everyone, right? Yeah. And then
I remember even seeing the trailers for where they would like take, I think it might actually be my DVD of Beauty and the Beast, that one of the trailers at the beginning, it's, doing the whole like Beauty and the Beast dance number, and then you get Stitch crawling across the ceiling and like drops the chandelier on him.
I mean, the marketing campaign was fantastic, right? There's him stealing Jasmine from Aladdin and all that sort of stuff. But like, Stitch in that original film is sort of an anti-hero. He's like a really bad character at the beginning, right? Like he is burping and farting and cursing, in his alien language. He is...
And it's like very clear that he's just using Lilo for protection, right?
And I feel like they toned all of that down. Like there's still some of that in here. Like in fact, some of those beats, they hit exactly the same, right? But like they've toned it all down in a way that he's not as delightful as a character as he is in the animated one. Like one of my favorite lines in the animated film is when Nani walks in and she's like on the phone talking. I forget who she's talking to, but she's talking to somebody, and she said, it's like a koala, and he's standing at the refrigerator and he turns and he goes, ah! And she goes, an evil koala. And it's like one of my favorite lines in the entire film. And they that's cut out of this. And so like they lose a lot of that. I feel like what Disney has done in a lot of their remakes is they've softened the edges.
Yeah.
Right. They've buffed them down to make them more, there's a great Lindsay Ellis video essay on how Disney in some ways is trying to redeem their movies. They're cutting out some of the things that have not aged well, like the racism in Dumbo, for example. Not that that was ever good, but like it's certainly completely unacceptable in a mass market film today. And she talks about, that's Disney. What they're doing in a lot of these films is they're trying to make them more palatable for a modern age. And, certainly there's nothing terribly offensive, I don't think, in that original Lilo and Stitch. But like, I feel like they've taken that to this extreme of, well, let's take our best character that we have introduced in the last 30 years of Disney films, right? Like our most marketable character. You go to Disney World and Stitch is on everything now. Like he is a bona fide moneymaker and has been that way much more than like even like what we think of as Disney classics like Aladdin, right? Like you don't see Aladdin or Abu or Genie on a lot of merchandise these days, or Simba, I mean, I know they just had that new film, but like you still don't see those characters an awful lot. You see Stitch on everything, shirts, hoodies. You go to, Walmart and they have Stitch merchandise. And like, not just for this film, but like, a year ago.
Just in perpetuity.
Yeah. And so like when you see him soften down a little, and again, I may be, the way I'm saying this may make it sound more extreme than it is, but like he doesn't have that same charm, and it was part of the reason I always loved that character, is part of the reason I fell in love with Chris Sanders as a director, because, he makes this, he goes on and makes How to Train Your Dragon. He goes on and makes, The Wild Robot last year. And he makes these sorts of films about these sort of outsider characters that are misunderstood. And then sort of by the end of it, they have won you over. They've charmed you. And I think he does that so incredibly well. And to see this film, it's just disappointing.
Well, like the softening characters is really a big problem in a lot of media today, I feel like. Because like there's so much, I think even of like when they did the Mean Girls musical and then when they made that into a movie, and it's like the characters aren't even mean anymore, really. They're just boring.
Right.
And it's like
Regina is boring in that movie. She's not as psychotically evil as she was in the original.
Yeah, and it's just like there's so much.
Or that was my take.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's so much of like, well, our characters can't be bad people. And it's like, well, characters can still be flawed and not perfect, because when they're perfect, they're boring.
Right.
And so it's like there's and again, this is so much media. This is movies, this is books, this is everything. They're so afraid of making characters that maybe are like, even in an alien language, cursing in a kid's movie. Oh, right. We can't have that. It's like, yeah, we can. Be clever with it, be fun with it, but.
Well, and I wonder if it's a fundamental misunderstanding of that original film. And I think a lot of people maybe don't understand that original film, but Lilo in that film, right? And okay, spoiler, I guess a slight spoiler if you've never seen either version of Lilo and Stitch, is a traumatized little girl.
Yeah.
She's lost her parents. Her sister is trying to raise her. Her sister's also traumatized. Nani is also traumatized. She lost her parents.
And is 19.
Right.
Yeah.
She's not an adult, right?
Yeah.
This is sort of going back to the Minecraft thing. You have to think of these as like very young characters, right? And she's very bad. She misbehaves. She bites one of the other little girls. And what do they introduce but this alien character who's bad, who bites everything, who is the physical embodiment of everything bad about Lilo. You could argue it's her id come to life in the film. And over the course of the film, it's Lilo teaching Stitch how to be good. And along the way, Lilo learns to be good as well. And so it's this like physical manifestation of like, you know, sort of dealing with trauma in the film. And when you tone that down, you lose something that like, and you know, that's the sort of thing, that's sort of a level of media literacy that probably goes over a lot of audiences' heads, but like it's subconsciously there.
Yeah.
I went and saw it in theaters, and then I actually went home and I watched the original.
So did I.
And I think
I know what I'm doing tonight.
and I said it before it started recording. I think the little girl that plays Lilo in this new movie is one of the better parts of the film. I think
very
she's
cute and charming.
Yeah, absolutely. There are ways that I think maybe it's in the softening that she does not necessarily feel like the same Lilo as the original movie, I guess. And what I'd say like that, in the original movie, she's such a sad little girl. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you necessarily get that in this new one. Mm-hmm. Again, she's very cute and she's very fun and charming, but I don't know if you get that same like grief and mourning that like she is still very clearly going through and is acting out because of it.
One of the things that you mentioned is that you didn't like Nani's character as much in this. Yeah. And one of the things I do not like about her character is she's not as mean to Lilo in it. And I always thought that was a really courageous choice in a film to make a character that fundamentally you're supposed to like be mean, right? Like we don't like, you know, siblings or parents, and she's a parental figure in the film, being mean to children. But it's also very realistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That she would snap at her, she would lose her temper with her.
Yeah, again, this 6-7-year-old and this 19-year-old who have just lost their parents, just being at each other's throats, right? Like there's that scene in the original where, you know, Lilo's like, why don't you just sell me and buy a rabbit instead? And then they go back and forth. And you don't really get that in this one. Right. And I think that scene is redeemed in the original because they have this coming together afterwards where Nani brings her the food and she, you know, she's like, you know, I like you more as a sister than a mom, but you like me more as a sister than a rabbit or something like that. And like it's this very, you know, it's this funny, but it's like this very heartwarming moment where like they're at each other's throats like sisters get, I'm sure. But like there's also this like very deep love as they recognize that they are trying their best in this moment. And I don't know if this new film ever really captures that. And
that's not like a unique story, right? This is something that, you know, S.C. Hinton writes into The Outsiders. The fact that Daryl is mean to Ponyboy, right? Like, because he's his big brother. He's not his dad.
Yeah.
And so like you understand it. I mean, I think it's easier if you have siblings to understand it, but I think everybody can understand it. And it is one of the things, it's one of the many things that this adaptation loses from the original.
Yeah, like I said, and I mean, like I said, we won't necessarily get into too dramatic of spoilers. I think the other thing is it makes some bold changes. I think that's the kindest way that I can put it. Changes that I don't necessarily love.
Particularly to the ending.
To the ending, and then in the changing of one character in particular that they, because of the removal of a different character. I can understand those decisions. I understand why people are frustrated about them online. I think if you've seen people posting about it online, I'd say be aware that I think there's a lot of bad faith representation of the ending of this movie online. That being said, it is still a dramatic change.
Sure.
Like I said, try to communicate that and not be like say exactly what happens, but
it can it's still a bad ending, but it's maybe not as crazy as people are making it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for the Saluki Film Cast. Thank you for joining us this week. Yeah, I mean, we are, I think, by nature of our work, we are all lovers of media, whether that is, video games or film or literature or whatever it might be. So sorry to our listeners if you're not wanting a review of Lilo and Stitch, but we will, from time to time, probably talk about this, unless you write us angry emails. Justin.young@sou.edu. Send us your angry emails that you don't want to hear a damn thing about Lilo and Stitch, and we'll say you're a lost cause, because if you don't want to talk about Lilo and Stitch, what are you doing with your life?
Join us next week for our Lilo and Stitch exclusive episode, where all we talk about is Lilo and Stitch.
As a watch party for.
We'll play through the Game Boy Advance version of the game. We'll
watch
talk about all the
Leroy and Stitch or whatever that film is.
The TV show that introduces all of the first 625 experiments.
Do you know that there is a Japanese anime of Lilo and Stitch, that Stitch leaves Lilo and lives with a Japanese family?
I did not know that.
And apparently you cannot get it anywhere in the U.S. now legally. So you have to find it online. But it's kind of weird and interesting. And my understanding is at some point in that anime, I'm remembering somebody had posted a clip online that Stitch with this new Japanese family meets an adult Lilo with her daughter that looks like Lilo, and it's really weird. Okay. And this was apparently,
I mean, that sounds like an anime move, to be fair.
This is apparently on Disney Plus in Japan, but you can't watch it in the US. So anyways, if you
try and find clips or something,
I'll say boot up the VPN.
Yeah, there are ways potentially to watch that if you want to. But this is about video games, so we're going to talk about video games. Alicia, what have you been playing video game related?
So I did actually download that Konami Pit Crew Nonogram app. I don't love it. Mm-hmm. I do think it's fun getting all the Konami properties and getting those in, but the big problem that I have is it lets me be wrong too much. So if you have a 10x10 grid and you're supposed to have 8 in a row filled in, you can have 2 blank and 8 filled in. You can have 1 blank, 8, 1 blank, or you can have 8 filled in and 2 blank at the end. And if I get that wrong, it doesn't correct you, versus the other nonogram ones that I've played where it'll be a little red flash, or it'll X out if you try to fill in a square that's not supposed to be filled in.
It doesn't tell you have any wrong until you finish the puzzle, right? Isn't that the way it does it?
It doesn't even tell you then. It just doesn't, you can have everything done, quote unquote,
just doesn't give you the picture.
And then you're just okay, well, oh, nope, looking up here, okay, there's supposed to be 2 3 ones, and I have a 3 and a 5 in a row filled in.
Right.
And so you just have to kind of wing it and figure out where you messed up.
Right.
So it's kind of been frustrating more than anything, which is a bummer, because it's fun, when I get a Castlevania one or something, I'm ha! Give me the wall chicken. But yeah, I'm still keeping it on my phone because it's still nice to mix up what ones I'm doing, but it's dropping on the priorities for me.
That's understandable. I feel that's the issue I always have with all those Picross games is the interface.
Yeah.
How much do I like the interface in this one versus a different one? And I would say that Mario Picross, the was it the DS, and then there's a 3DS, there's 3D Picross. Those have probably the best interface I've ever seen from those games. But I can see that totally being what turns people off from one versus another.
Yeah.
especially on phones, because like the interface is so much more kind of clunky, like with the touch screen and everything, versus when you have a mouse or can have a few more inputs.
Yeah. I'll say the one that I think, as far as phone games, has the best interface is one that I've been doing. What is it? Cat Tower? Meow Tower. Where you're literally just like building an apartment building, and you get every time you get a new floor, you get a new cat, and then you're like you're earning tuna cans that you trade for furniture to fill up their rooms. It's just cute, but it's also, like I said, probably the best interface of them on the phone games that I've found, because if you click on if you try to fill in a square that's not supposed to be filled in, again, it'll just kind of do like that red flash. But then the other thing is each one just gets a 3-star ranking. So if you mess up too many times, you go from 3 stars down to 2 stars or whatever, but it doesn't kick you out of the puzzle, versus like the one that I talked about last week that has the storyline. You mess up 5 times on that and you have to restart everything. And I'm like, oh. So
I just download it, Meowtar.
It's adorable and I love it.
I mean, I do like this big fat calico that I'm greeted with.
Yes. All of the cat and the cats have such fun personalities. I think my favorite right now is Shadow, who's like a evil wizard. He's like,
that's not fair. Shadow is a ninja. I have played Final Fantasy 3/6.
Here, I thought you were about to say Shadow is a hedgehog.
No. Justin would never make that joke.
What are you talking about? I have standards.
But yeah, or who's the other one? There's one that's like Argo, who's like an artist from the city. You've got Buzz, who's like super into space and all of that. And
Buzz is into space.
Yeah.
Did not see that one coming.
I would say none of them are safe. Arthur is the detective cat, because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Just whoever makes Meow Tower better get their lawyers prepared from Disney.
Tim Allen, specifically.
But yeah, it's just adorable and fun. So that's been a lot of my like de-stress, playing games on my phone. Yeah, I can't find my Switch, so I need to find that. It's either in my backpack or in my suitcase, because I traveled back out to Indiana again to find a place to live last week, and so I don't remember if I put it in my backpack or my suitcase. I know it's with me because I never took it out while I was there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I haven't been able to get back to Ace Attorney Investigations 2 yet, but it's been a lot of like playing those nonogram games and playing Office Cat and just, like I said, Thunderbolts has completely taken over my brain, so I've honestly been playing less and reading and writing more.
I will say this Meowtar game is driving me nuts with its tutorial at the beginning.
The tutorial is really...
It just won't let me skip the tutorial. And I'm like, I already know what I'm doing. Please let me skip this. And so it's like a Nintendo game where they're going to like, no, you're going to play this tutorial for the first 10 hours.
Hey, I know it's Pokemon Generation 9, but you better make sure you know how to catch a Pokemon.
So I just want somebody there at the beginning going, do you know how to catch a Pokemon? Yes or no? Yeah. And if you select yes, they're like, okay, be with God.
That's that. Are you familiar with Pokemon? Have you encountered Pokemon before? Yes. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone now.
Yep.
Give me my Pokeballs and let me do my thing.
No, that's cute. Like, and I get why you like the interface of this one. Yeah, I mean, if you have never played one of those style of games, like I do highly recommend find one of them that you like the interface for, because those are really fun little puzzle games.
Yeah. It's very calming. Like, it's become my thing. Like, when I'm getting ready for bed, I'm like, okay, let me like play through the Meow Tower. You get 8 lives on a timer. So you get to play through 8 levels, and then...
Wait, you don't get 9?
I know, it's cruel.
Do you have to save 1 life?
That's the 9th life.
There you
they
go.
don't give you access to.
But so I'll like play through the 8. If I'm still like awake, I'll watch the ad to get another 10 to play through. But then I'm like, okay, this is my like bring my brain down from all of the craziness of the day and just breathe and exist and chill out.
The craziness of reading all the Thunderbolts fan fiction
Yes.
of the day.
Yes.
You got to calm down after that exciting.
Look, we all know this movie is about mental health. There's so much fan fiction that is like, it's me. Oh no. But also like getting to have fun with asshole characters like John Walker. So,
I am surprised, and I guess I shouldn't be, but like I've been surprised by how much people have embraced John Walker after this film.
Right?
Because, I mean...
Everyone, they were awful to him after Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right. And so the fact that like this film turned people so much around on that character really kind of shocked me. And I see lots of people online who are like, oh, he's just the best character. He's now my favorite. And I'm like, really? Like JV Captain America is your favorite character now?
Yes. Yes, he is. I tended to adopt the asshole Blurbos, and I have adopted him.
All right. That explains Shadow the Hedgehog so well. I feel like
I repeat, Shadow the Hedgehog has never been my favorite Sonic character. But
I mean, it explains the love of Shadow the Hedgehog just in general.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else?
That's been the big stuff.
All right, cool. Mario.
Yeah, so I finished up Death Bulge, the game that I was playing from last week. I talked about it a lot. That game is really good. It's not a 2025 game, but I can say pretty confidently that will be very high on my list of best and or favorite games that I played in 2025.
This is the Battle of the Bands RPG?
Battle of the Bands RPG. I highly recommend it. It's one of those ones that I think, well, I was going to say, I think JRPG fans will like it. I think non-JRPG fans will like it because it's not your traditional like turn-based combat because it does enough different. But, maybe traditional JRPG fans will not like that aspect of it. But I think that this is a game that I would recommend to really like anybody who's into video games. I really think it is that good. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. And I don't know how many hours I put into it. I did not all the side content. I didn't end up like 100%ing the game, but each area. So there's the boss of each area that progresses the narrative. And then there's like a music legend in each area that's kind of like the super boss of that area. And so I did beat all of those bosses along the way. So there's definitely an additional amount of time. But I would say that like this is not, like a 20-hour RPG. Like it's maybe 15, 16 max. But also probably beatable in like 10 if you were to really like rush through it. But honestly, I would say don't do that. Like I said, there's a lot that is worth enjoying. There's a lot about it that's really silly. I think it's very funny. Like I said, was laughing and chuckling throughout.
Do you think this would appeal to the like sort of Undertale crowd?
I mean, it's hard to say because I've never played Undertale.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you had.
No, it's one that I would like to at some point. It's kind of on that infinite backlog. I think,
Well, now's the time because we're almost to Deltarune tomorrow.
so true. I I mean, I think so. I mean, like I said, it's hard for me to accurately say if it's gonna scratch that same itch, but I enjoyed it.
You've played Earthbound though, right?
I've played Earthbound a little bit. That's another game that is kind of on that same backlog that I've never beaten though.
Okay, well, it just sounds an awful lot like in the vein of those style
Like that type
games.
of humor.
Sure.
Yeah, like I wish I could more accurately say yes or no.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's but like I said, I don't know if it'll be number one, but almost assuredly it'll be in my top 5 for this year, and it might be number one. It's probably number one right now. I'll put it that way, of games I've played this year.
Cool.
The other thing that I just started playing the other day is the N64 Hercules: The Legendary Journeys video game, the one based on the Kevin Sorbo television show. The main reason so that game is sort of infamous within our N64 group just because it's got like your N64 jank and then like plus added to it. But the specific reason that I started playing it is one of the friends in that group has, I think earlier this year, got the record for the speed run and got it into this summer Games Done Quick. So he's going to be running it at SGDQ.
Oh, wow.
I guess next month.
That's cool.
Not next month. It's in like early July. But so I was like, okay, I actually do have to play this now because it's one that they played years ago at this point for the first time. And so I am now playing through it, and it is a game, that's for sure. It's not very good. I mean, like I said, there's like the normal amount of N64 jank that that I just expect, but even just like other aspects of the game design are not great. The amount of back and forth that you have to do you have to use this character. You've got to go get this thing from this place to then bring to another place so that you can give it to this character so that this character can go get this thing so you can
the big fetch quest.
It's a lot of fetch questing and a lot of money grinding, and it's just like it's one of those things that I feel like if this game were made in 2025, which I don't know why they would be making Hercules: The Legendary Journeys in 2025, but
I feel like that's
because they can get the rights.
I feel like that's a very different game with 2025 Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, also true. Yeah, it's the amount of back and forth between I'm, going from place A to place B, swapping to a different character to go to place C so that I can return to place B so that I can go back to place A so that I can go back to place B to then go to place C. And it's just like, oh my God. And it's very clearly like I've already done it once, and actually I think I've already done it twice. It's very easy to like miss required items. You have to talk to like all of the NPCs so that you can get each of the required items, because you need that item to then like progress the plot, and it will not tell you otherwise. If you have, the only reason I figured out that I was missing a specific thing is because that friend, I'm streaming it, that friend was in the chat. He was like, yeah, I think you're missing something from one of the earlier towns. And I was like, great. And so it was funny because, I'm swapping characters back to Hercules, and Hercules is like, okay, yeah, I can take over from here. I think you might be missing something though. And it's like, yeah, I got it. And then the friend was like, maybe Hercules needs to consider that he was actually the one that was missing. Yeah. So it's just like, it doesn't do a great job of the breadcrumbing that we see in games today, which I think is fair for that generation of games. But this one has just a layering of not great things.
Yeah.
Two things. First, I looked at some images, and the first image that came up with this game was him just punching a centaur in the face.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's cool, at least. Maybe Mario's underselling this game after all. But the second thing is, yeah, like when people talk about old games, one of the things that they miss about modern games, and there's a lot of crapping from like older video game fans about new games are too easy, they're all tutorialized and everything. But like old games did stuff like this all the time.
Yeah.
Like people, like I think older people like me have forgotten it because they haven't gone back and played a lot of those older games lately. And young people often just don't know because they don't play the bad older games a lot of times, right? Like people go back and they're like, oh yeah, I love the classics. I play Mario 3 all the time. And it's like, yeah, that's one of the best games ever made. Like, did you play anything else for the NES?
Yeah, have you gone back and played Bubsy? Play that one and then tell me how you feel about old games.
Well, and
Any
even
of
like
the Bubsies.
well, and even like I remember one of my favorite YouTubers did a forced blind of Castlevania 2.
Yeah.
And because that game for a while had the big reputation of being like, oh, it's impossible. They don't give you any hints. They don't do anything to like tell you what to do or whatever. And so he was like, I've played this game before. I've beaten it before, but I'm only going to use the clues in the game until I literally can't. And even when he did that, he was like, there's like one spot that the game genuinely tells you the wrong thing. And then there's another spot that I had to go back and remind myself how to do this. But like overall, it's not that bad. And I'm like, yeah, it's not compared to like, how did that become the poster child of insane fetch quests that don't give you any information?
Well, I mean, I think for that game particularly, what a lot of people don't realize is that Nintendo Power did a complete walkthrough of that game. And there were a whole lot of people who got that game when it came out and could not beat it because with the translation in English, it's almost impossible to beat that game because, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like there are people who are lying to you in the game, some of the villagers and stuff. And some of the clues that they give don't actually make sense or actually like wrong in some manner. But yeah, I mean, the fact that a lot of old games had things like this where, well, you have to talk to every NPC in order to figure out all the items and get all the items or to unlock something, or you have to go talk to this random character 3 times. Nobody tells you have to talk to this character 3 times, right? But like you just have to. Games had a lot of that sort of jank in them, and that's okay if it's like sort of secret stuff that isn't, necessary to progress in the game. But like when that is the game itself, that's incredibly frustrating.
Well, and I think in this particular case, it wasn't even missing talking to all the NPCs. It was talking to them in the wrong order.
Jeez.
Because you need to talk to the farmer to get wheat, and then, which I mean, again, like logically it makes sense, but you need to get the grain, and then you need to talk to the miller to turn it into flour, which again, that makes sense. But like having talked to all of them, I'm not going back after having, beaten the quest in this area. Oh, I better go talk to everybody a second time.
Yeah. Especially if it's not saying, hey, you need some.
Or actually, I did go back and talk to most everybody a second time, except this one person.
But the prime demographic for a game like this, right? For a Hercules N64 game is probably like 8 to 10-year-olds. How many of them even know like how to like make flour?
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, and I realized with this second time, I'm talking to Hephaestus, and he's like, "You need to go get the torch of whatever in order to progress," and he's like, "You need to go talk to one of my followers. We'll tell you more about it." And I only realized, oh, I'm missing a thing because there's one of them that says, "Oh, I wonder how my cousin in this town is doing." Like, I'm going to have to go freaking talk to this cousin in this town that I was at all this time ago in order to get the thing to then get this other cousin to come to talk to me and give me the torch of Hephaestus or whatever. And and it's like, it'd be in today's game design, I feel like one of two things would happen. Either it would not let you leave an area if you don't have that item.
Right.
The game would say like, I think I'm missing a thing before I should head out. I need to talk to somebody. Or there would be quick travel.
I was gonna
where you could
say-
just like fast travel back to that other town
Right.
once you've activated it or once you've been there. I don't have to now run back through basically 2 other like wild open areas. And it's like I'm going a little above and beyond with my complaining here, but it is just one of those things that in going back and playing a lot of these old N64 games, the thing that stands out the most is like, wow, game design has changed over time.
For the better.
Yeah. Again, it's all those quality of life things that we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are huge improvements that people often undervalue. Because, I was talking about King's Quest, I think, last week on the podcast.
That sounds right.
And I love those games, but you go back and you try to play those 80s and, up to the mid-90s Sierra Online and Lucasfilm adventure games. Some of them are almost unplayable today if you did not grow up playing those games, right? Like if you weren't playing them at that time, to go back now, they're like so, they're just, it's so difficult to even begin to pierce.
It's like playing Blueprints. Like Blueprints today is like how cryptic some of these damn hints are in 1987 is what Blueprints is in 2025.
No, Blueprints is nowhere near those games. I will give you, there are things in Blueprints that are very difficult, but
I'm mostly joking, but
so much. But I think that's
Can
to
you
the
imagine
point, right?
Blueprints in 1987?
Blueprints is so much easier than Blueprints in 1987, right?
Oh,
if
yeah,
that game had been made
absolutely.
in 1987, it would have been like, well, nobody's ever solving this game without buying the hint book. And that is a game you can solve, at least beat the main game without a hint book.
Sure.
And so, it's kind of amazing when you go back and play those games. And that's interesting because that's a game I've never played Hercules on the N64. When you start saying, "Oh, I played Hercules on the N64," I was like, the Disney film?
Nope. We went and I didn't join for all of them, but we went and watched a lot of Hercules: The Legendary Journeys, the television show, after playing it.
Yeah.
And it's weird to watch knowing who Kevin Sorbo is today, but
Xena
that was
better.
That was a television show. Yeah, I don't know if I think maybe some people watched Xena. I know I didn't join for Xena.
I feel like if Christina was here, she'd have a lot to say about Xena,
Yeah.
because Xena was I feel like a lot of young women's awakening. That show is not even subtle with a lot of the themes in it. It was also the awakening for a lot of young men.
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of young people in general.
In different ways, but also in a way they can probably appreciate together. So
Christina, come back. We miss you.
Next week I'll probably will have finished Hercules: The Legendary Journeys.
is there a Xena game on N64?
There is, but I think it's a fighting game.
Weird.
I don't think it's not like an action game the way that Hercules is. But I know confidently there is a Xena game.
All right. Well, I feel like you should play both and then
Sure.
report back to us which one is better.
Like I said, I will. Like I said, I think Xena's pretty short, so I can play through that one because again, I think it's just a fighting tournament style game.
I feel like Xena's going to be the better game, just like it's the better TV show.
I mean, it's a pretty low bar to beat this Hercules game.
Interestingly enough, every time they do that, they have this male focus show, and then they do a female focus spinoff. It feels like the female focus spinoff is better because the same thing with She-Ra.
I was going to say
80s.
He-Man and She-Ra.
She-Ra is a better written show than He-Man is. And I think that's really interesting. The people who wrote She-Ra went on and like created television for the next 40 years, which is really kind of interesting. Was it J. Michael Straczynski wrote on She-Ra, who went on and created Babylon 5, and Chuck Lorre, I think it is, was a writer on She-Ra. It's like a lot of weird people that kind of like surprise you worked on that show. All right. Anything
But
else?
He-Man gave us what's going on, so
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. So I didn't really play anything much new. I continued playing Doom: The Dark Ages. I continue to really enjoy that game. That game feels, it feels very much like a throwback in some ways. I guess in the way that Doom 2016 did, that it feels, there's a story, but the story doesn't matter. And you're just like kind of enjoying jumping in there and killing a bunch of guys. And it's kind of over the top. And I will say that the more I play this, the more I just really love the combat, because one of the things that this game does, I think that really kind of makes it feel quite a bit different than the last two Dooms, is it allows you to sort of like stand your ground when you're fighting a battle. So even Doom 2016, you were constantly having to move as you were playing, which is very true to the original Doom, where you were constantly like strafing, circle strafing, and all that sort of stuff. But in this one, because you need to be able to like hit enemies with your shield at times, there are times that you just have to stand in front of an enemy and just like shoot them and attack them. And like, you know, they're firing laser blast at you, and you're having to parry those with your shield so that it goes back and stuns them. And so it's less of a game about running and hiding from enemies and more about like just kind of taking them on toe to toe. And that kind of just gives it a very different feel. And I'm just really enjoying it. I'm enjoying this game a lot more than I thought I would. And I feel like the more I play of it, the more I'm really, really liking it. So big thumbs up for Doom: The Dark Ages, particularly if you just want a sort of balls to the wall action game and everything, because that's exactly what it's delivering.
Are you still playing Expedition 33, or is that kind of fallen at this point?
I am a little, not as much as I should. Mm-hmm. That's sort of like a long-term project,
Sure.
Right? To like get through. And I am still playing it. Again, it's a game that I'm still enjoying quite a bit. I like the combat in it, because it is that very sort of active combat. Again, the thing I would compare it to that I think most people would be familiar with is Mario RPG, where you're constantly doing stuff during combat. Is even more active than Mario RPG.
Yeah, I saw somebody say it's a Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga like.
Yeah. One of like those handheld like Mario and Luigi games, I think are a good example. Like Nintendo, basically all the Mario RPG line, right?
Yep.
They've always tried to make those more active in the way than traditional turn-based. And even though this has all the trappings of a traditional turn-based game, it is asking you to be more active constantly during battles. And how much you like that is going to vary. Like, there's part of me that likes those traditional games because that's what I, grew up playing a lot of. But I think this makes this game, I would think, more appealing to audiences that maybe don't like traditional JRPGs.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. In some ways, I would say that's my reasoning why, if somebody's like not a huge RPG fan, I think the Battle of the Bands game would be similar. Is like, it's doing something different that is not gonna. If there's something about the traditional that you're like that doesn't really vibe with you, I'd say still like take a look at this one. And it sounds like Expedition 33 is kind of doing something similar as well.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it's also like a game that's sort of very inviting into it. Whereas I could see something, not that these games are terribly difficult to get into, but I could see something like a Persona maybe being slightly more intimidating to somebody who doesn't have a background with these sorts of games already.
Sure.
I did see, I don't think I put it in the rundown, but they said they've sold like 3.3 million copies of that game already.
Nice.
And, you know, that's cool to hear about that game, because we need more games like this. We need more games that are doing something different and are priced at, it's difficult to say budget, because I think this game was $50 when it came out, but you know, has regularly been available, I know, on PC for $30 or so.
I think it might have been 40.
Okay, it might have been 40.
Yeah. I know I've at least seen it for 40. So if it was 50, then
Priced reasonably.
yeah, it's not your full 70 or potentially now $80 price point.
And, you know, it's still like a 30-hour game.
Yeah, you're definitely getting your money's worth.
Yeah, like I don't, you know, we used to pay $50 for games that were much shorter than 30 hours quite often. So I think you will get your money out of it. You know, those are two really good games that are taking sort of very classic genres and just showing that you don't have to create an entirely new genre for a game to be interesting. You can take these old genres and just continue tweaking them, continue bringing something new to the mix. You know, when I get people, I'm that way sometimes. Like, I want to see something entirely new, something very different with games. But, you know, there's lots of people out there making lots of games that are very traditional at first glance, and then you start playing them and you're like, oh no, this is something fresh and new. So highly recommend both of those games. Both of those games are on Xbox Games Pass. So if if you're subscribing to that and don't want to spend a lot of money, you know, you can definitely play through both of those. And Doom particularly is a game, if you were playing it all the time, you could blow through pretty quickly.
Yeah, the first two I don't think are too terribly long either.
No. All right, that does it for what we've been playing. Let's move on to the news. So news of this broke yesterday, and I had it in the rundown, and then they just came out and announced it today. PlayStation is doing their Days of Play event again. So this is where they do discounts on hardware and software. This is, I think, really kind of surprising because they have been raising the price on their hardware.
I was going to say, didn't we just last week talk about, maybe 2 weeks ago, talk about prices going up?
It has been very recently. We have talked about them raising prices in Europe. And then they announced, the rumor yesterday was that they were dropping prices in Europe for this event. They announced today, yes, in Europe, but also here in the U.S. We weren't quite sure on that. So this seems like so bizarre to me, other than they can say like, hey, we're doing a $100 discount on this bundle if you buy it right now. Like, why would you raise prices just to almost immediately drop them again? Just seems bizarre, other than maybe that's just what the financial world markets are like right now. And Sony's like, hell, we don't know. This could be any price a week from now. We make no guarantees. But anyways, as part of this, they are dropping prices on the PlayStation 5 and some of the hardware and software. So like, I think the big one that'll be of interest to most people is the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Digital Edition bundle. So this is the one that doesn't come with a disc drive. That is on sale for this Days of Play event at $400. Now, this is the new model that you can add a disc drive at any point. You can buy that disc drive that clips on and everything. So you could buy this, and then if later you decide you want a disc drive, you could buy that separately. I think it's $70 or so for the disc drive. But anyways, $400 is what I paid for the digital edition at launch. And this comes with Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which is, you know, like a cool, nice to have in there and everything. So it seems like a reasonable price to me for this.
Justin's great deal of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it literally might just be this week.
Yes. If you want this deal, do not sleep on it, because Sony, who knows what they might do by tomorrow even. So that is a discount that they are doing on the digital edition. There is also the disc drive edition, but it's slightly higher, but they're also doing a discount on it. The PlayStation 5 Pro and the PlayStation VR 2 bundles are all getting $50 discounts. I feel like that PlayStation VR 2 should get a much larger discount.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm surprised they're not giving that thing away.
The PlayStation 5 Pro apparently is not selling particularly well, so a $50 discount I don't think makes a huge difference there, but that might be a case of they can't afford to do a bigger discount because of the cost of the hardware.
I mean, that's not even like 10% of a discount,
No,
right?
because
So what, $700?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, $50, I feel like there's not making a huge difference.
Yeah. If you can afford a $700 thing, I don't know how much $50 is making or breaking your purchase. Maybe it is for some people, but
I don't feel like anybody's sitting on the fence on that one. Whereas this digital edition bundle with Call of Duty,
sure, absolutely,
feels like a good deal. I mean, now there are people who are going to see that and go, I have no interest in Call of Duty. That I get.
Yep.
But if you were interested in Call of Duty to begin with,
I was going to say, but as someone who doesn't care about Call of Duty, that still feels like a good deal versus the $50 discounts of like.
I imagine that's a code in the box to redeem.
Oh,
that.
I'm sure.
That's how that usually works.
Would be my guess as well.
I'm sure.
And so you could always sell that code if you wanted to, and probably get at least $20 out of it. And then they're going to have various discounts on games and other accessories, controllers, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, like I feel like if the game market is not going to stagnate, they need these sorts of discounts. Like, you can't have hardware 5+ years into the life cycle that's more expensive than when it released. Mm-hmm. Like, people, this was already a very expensive console generation. $500, $400 to $500 is a lot of money to put down for a new console. So you've gotten those people, for the most part, to already buy one of these. So you can't keep raising the price. You've got to add some value.
Yeah.
And at $400 with a game, that feels like a decent value. I mean, $350 or something would be better. Let's see. There are multiple rumors. Speaking of Sony, there are multiple rumors about game companies doing events around Summer Game Fest. This is not shocking in the least. But there are rumors claiming that Nintendo is expected to hold a direct sometime around the launch of the Switch 2. That is June 5th. Nintendo usually does a direct sometime around here. I feel like Nintendo also needs to announce some more games for the Switch 2 for coming this fall.
Yeah.
There's certainly been lots of rumors. We've talked about, certainly Microsoft porting some games over to the Switch 2. None of those have been announced so far. I feel like Nintendo probably has at least one more first-party game to come out this fall to kind of fill out that lineup. They certainly have the new Pokemon Legends game. They have Metroid 4. But, there's still some holes, I feel like, in their holiday lineup. They probably not something as big as a 3D Mario game, but they probably are going to put something else first party out this fall, I would think. So, that would be a chance to be able to announce that, also showcase some more third-party software because, everybody seems to be jumping on board in that regard. So that makes a whole lot of sense. Along with that, Sony is also rumored to have a state of play. this is, again, of course they're going to do this around Summer Games Fest. It would be more shocking, more newsworthy if they weren't doing it. But both of these companies have not officially announced anything yet. So these are just rumors for now. But we are a week away from Summer Game Fest beginning. A week away, I guess a week and a half away from the launch of the Switch 2. That's on the 5th of June. And then the next day on the 6th is when Summer Game Fest kicks off. So, if they're going to do something, we're a week and a half away. Nintendo often these days just announces their directs the day before.
Yeah.
But they're going to want to, position that so it's not dropping at the same time as something else, right? They don't want to do their event the same time that Sony or Microsoft or Summer Game Fest is happening. Like they're, the big kickoff of Summer Game Fest.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could see them doing it June 4th, but then I'm also to do it and build the hype the day before release. But then I'm also thinking about Deltarune's dropping June 4th in the U.S., so maybe June 3rd. We'll see.
I don't know if they would do it before the release of the Switch. I almost feel like they would do it after, slightly after.
Yeah, they could do it the week after, right? So let next week be the launch because that's going to get them plenty of headlines. And then that's on Thursday. And then that following week, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, do a Nintendo Direct. And then that's a chance for them to build even more hype for the launch, right?
Yeah, you get to be like, oh, how's everybody enjoying Mario Kart World and all the other games that you've been playing thus far?
No, that makes sense.
It's almost like as some amount of check-in. That said, I could see them doing it beforehand as well, of as everybody excited type of thing. But
that was what I was picturing. Who else excited? And pre-orders are pretty much done at this point, but just so you know, here's the bundle with the next game.
Have you seen those pictures out there where I think they're mostly from Target stores where they already have the systems out in the back of the store and they have them in these cages so that people can't get into them. And so it's kind of neat because there's all these pictures flooding onto social media of we have them, they're in stock, but we can't touch them.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of excitement for that, right? So, yeah, sometime around then, whether it's, right before or very soon after, I think you do want to start saying, okay, you put down $500. Now here's what's coming next.
Yeah.
Right. Here's what's going to keep you excited. And I think part of that we probably get is we get some sort of announcement of the first DLC for Mario Kart World. Whether that's paid or it's free DLC, I think there's going to be some sort of long tail to that game, right?
Yeah.
Because they had a lot of success with Mario Kart 8 with that. So I think they're going to do some DLC for that game.
Yeah. And I think it also then lets them, you get past the launch and then you can start building, if Donkey Kong is the next big game. And yeah, here's what is still to come.
Yeah.
Because I think if you do it beforehand, there's almost an expectation that a lot of it is going to be Mario Kart World. And I think people are already yeah, we know what this is about.
That makes sense.
I think they do a deep dive for Donkey Kong.
Yeah, at some point.
You show off more of the gameplay. There seems to be some hidden stuff to that game they have not revealed yet. So, Pauline is supposedly in there. They showed off a new redesign for Diddy Kong, which to me hints that Diddy Kong is in that game in some fashion.
Because I think all we got was it wasn't just a cinematic, but there was no talking about the game. I think it was just here's our final thing, and then the direct ended.
Right. As far as in the direct, they did show some gameplay the next day of people playing it, but even that it felt like it was the first area of the game, right? It wasn't. I feel like that game is probably more expansive than we are realizing.
That would be, if it's, if this is from the Odyssey team, I'm expecting something that is at least Odyssey sized.
Yeah, and I don't feel like that's been shown yet. So I feel like that gives you a chance to show that off. Plus, I mean, there's all the other stuff that Nintendo has. There's that, was it Drag and Drive?
Oh, that's right.
The wheelchair race basketball game. And they have not shown off much of that at all. And if that game's not like a $20 game, they've got to do a lot more to sell that game.
Yeah.
Another Direct, I imagine. I mean, I guess it's been a couple of months since the last one, but you maybe get a little more information on whatever the new Kirby Air Ride game is.
Right.
That might get a date.
Because we haven't seen any gameplay.
I was going to say, probably
no
a month
gameplay.
for that. Of like, okay, this is coming in February or whatever.
Well, that's supposed to be this year.
Supposed to be this year.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be a
Cool.
holiday,
November.
before holiday release.
But we haven't seen any gameplay for that. So
Yeah. Right.
I feel like post-launch, you have to start showing gameplay of that.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a big release for them
Yeah.
as well.
Nintendo with the Switch basically got into a cadence of we have one first-party release just about every month.
Yeah.
So I would, and I know some of that is they're doing these like expansions, right? So like the expansion for the last Kirby game, the Forgotten Land,
Forgotten Land.
that, they're doing that expansion. So maybe that's their big release 1 month, right? Because that's sort of a whole new part of a game.
Yeah.
But like, when they do the Air Ride, that's their big release. They're probably not going to release something else that same month. And so, you want to start hyping that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you figure if Donkey Kong is coming out in July and Air Ride is October, November, you got a couple of months in there to fill as well. And
Yeah.
at the beginning of a console's lifespan,
You want to get
you
stuff
got to
out.
have something in there.
And you're also wanting to get different stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't want to have it all be Mario.
Right. Like you're wanting to hit different target demographics. I'm actually kind of surprised. I feel like we're going to hear something about Animal Crossing sooner rather than later, because I feel like that's the sort of game they want to get out there and get those people who bought a Switch during the pandemic to play Animal Crossing, which was a lot of people.
Yeah.
They want to say, hey, you need to get one of these.
Yeah. I feel
That's
like
gonna
that'll
sell
be
systems.
that's got to be one that they do a bundle for as well. Of like,
Probably.
The other one, just in terms of something different as like a first party release that I could see sooner rather than later, would be a new Fire Emblem. It's a popular series,
Yeah.
and that's a very different type of game.
yeah.
Because it's been a few, I want to say a couple of years since Engage at the very least.
Yeah. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, so I think if you're a company like Nintendo and you have those resources, you're wanting to kind of pull in all those different demographics, right? Metroid Prime 4 is sort of like the hardcore gamer game. Like the people who look at Nintendo, a lot of their stuff and says, that's for babies, because they're stuck in like 1988 still. But like, I feel like there are people, that's going to be the thing that makes them buy a Switch too.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where I feel like, Fire Emblem or like a Xenoblade or something like that. Something that like the more strategy, tactics, RPG people can get into.
You can say nerds.
I mean, I was gonna say nerds, but I was like, it ain't like any of these other
was
games
gonna
aren't
say.
nerds either.
It's
Not-
all nerds.
I mean, there's no MLB on there for us. Again, cool guys.
MLB The Show, the cool game. Did they publish that for the Switch yet?
I have no idea.
I feel like that came out for the Switch. They were supposed to put that everywhere at one point.
I feel like probably yes. I feel like I saw it walking past a kiosk at Target, but I can't say for sure.
The way you were saying that, I was imagining like MLB The Show walking past you. You're like, Mario was like, I was at the mall and MLB The Show walked by. It's like, Mario, had you been drinking? Yeah, so I mean, look, Summer Games Fest, very exciting.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that next week, I'm sure. Let's see. Developers have claimed that the Switch 2 supports USB mouse controls. So this is obviously the sort of mouse controls that are built into the Joy-Cons, but like they're saying you can just plug in a USB mouse and it will work.
That's kind of cool.
That's nice.
I think that makes perfect sense. And I know one of the criticisms that the mouse controls so far have gotten is that they're, maybe that's a little uncomfortable to hold the Joy-Con sideways like that. I have always assumed that there will be third-party little things you can plug that into in the way like the Wii controller could.
Yeah.
To make it feel more like a traditional mouse. But if I can just plug in a USB mouse.
Yeah. I was expecting something like the Super Nintendo mouse at some point. But yeah, I mean, there's no need for something like that at that point.
And if this will work with any off-the-shelf USB mouse, that means you can go to Walmart and buy a $10 mouse.
I can just use the mouse that I already use with my tablet.
Right, yeah. I mean, it will... Well, I guess they probably do still have USB-A ports on the dock, right?
I would think so.
But
that's a good point.
If not, you can buy those like little dollar USB-C to A dongles on Amazon. But that's cool because that's built into the hardware. It means we've already heard a lot of companies are putting mouse controls into their games, like the Civilization 6 and a lot of the kind of the strategy focus, kind of more traditional PC games. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense for pretty much every first-person shooter. It's in Metroid 4. And so when you start looking at it from that perspective, that's not how I'm going to play a lot of games because my Switch is connected to my TV, and if not, it's in handheld mode. But if that works for people,
so it's just neat to have the option.
Yeah, I think totally. And you could do a wireless mouse that way, right? Like I have a table next to my couch. I could put the mouse on that if I have a wireless mouse.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because I remember one of the things we talked about, with the Joy-Con mice. Okay, you're gonna like have to hunch over or whatever
right.
Versus if you've already got a mouse hooked up to, wireless mouse, just got a little TV tray next to you or whatever.
I wonder if this will work with Bluetooth mice. So that would be my big question. Is it going to have to be one where you plug a dongle in because it only works with USB-based ones, or can I just connect a Bluetooth mouse to this and have it work?
I don't know.
That's one of those questions we probably won't get until actual people have the hardware.
Yeah, they've tried it, all the things.
Let's see. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. So as far as I can tell, this is only coming out on Switch 2 for now. I kind of thought we would get an announcement that, hey, this is going to be an upgrade for PC, and you can pay $10 to get the upgrade to the Director's Cut or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been my assumption as well.
But so far they are not announcing that, so we'll see if that does happen eventually. But one of the actors said that there are at least 26 minutes of new cutscenes that help tie up some loose ends in the storyline.
I was like, well, that's got to be a typo. That's new cutscene. 26 minutes. That's only one cutscene in it. That's only one cutscene in a Yakuza game.
Yeah,
I was genuinely looking for a typo for a minute there. I was like, what?
Well, he confused me too because I was like, wait, what? No, fair with Yakuza. But so this feels like probably not a huge shift to the game, right? But maybe just some tidying up.
I hate to, as much as I enjoy the Yakuza games, it feels like I'll find these cutscenes on YouTube and watch them there.
Right. But it is neat. I mean, it's interesting. Like when they announced a director's cut, right? My assumption was, well, this isn't something entirely new. You've ported this to everything else. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a couple of new missions that you're sticking in here.
Sure.
And to hear that they're bringing actors back in to record new dialogue does make me sort of feel like, okay, well, maybe this is more substantial than I at first thought.
Yeah. Especially because there are some of those characters that they're only in that game. So like to get to potentially see like new stuff from those characters is pretty cool.
Yeah. Battlefront 2 developers have made it clear in various different places and on social media that they really want to make a Battlefront 3. This is not shocking.
Is anyone surprised?
But one of the things that's been kind of interesting is that Battlefront 2 hit its highest peak of concurrent players on Steam, like within the last week.
Wow.
So, that's I forget, 7-8-year-old game at this point. And so to see that it's hitting its highest concurrent peak of players just now, yes, that game has been available very cheap over the years and everything. So lots of more people have added it to their collection, but that there's genuine interest in this sort of, Star Wars game. And that sort of interest may be at its peak right now.
It's a Battlefront. That's the Star Wars. I was thinking Battlefield.
Yes, sorry, Star Wars Battlefront 2, not so that there's no confusion over this.
Because you said Star Wars, I'm like, what? No, I know what you're talking about.
So some people have pointed to Andor, the Disney Plus Star Wars series that, it just ended its second season. And so a lot of people are pointing to that. Okay, well, this ties together. They just re-released Revenge of the Sith into theaters like a month or two ago. So that maybe there's just some hype and interest in Star Wars right now.
Yeah.
Brewing.
Yeah, I mean, now realizing that this is Star Wars, I'm kind of surprised that that's not a thing that's already like in the works. Because I feel like the Battlefront 2 in particular had a pretty good following.
Yeah,
And
had that very rocky launch, but then I feel like it corrected.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. Alex Garland, director of things such as Ex Machina, has signed on to direct an Elden Ring film for A24. This is maybe the most appropriate news, but also like the wildest news, because A24 does not make big, huge movies.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's most surprising. Like,
Yeah.
And Alex Garland makes kind of small movies. I mean, I guess he did Civil War, right? I think
Did
that
he?
was his last film that came out.
That's a great question.
And he even a film like that's kind of a bigger story and everything, right? Like he did it on a very kind of like small, intimate level, which was why a lot of people didn't like that movie, I feel like. And so to see them doing this with something like Elden Ring, you kind of think that feels like it should be big.
Yeah, I mean, how do you? It will be interesting to see if he sticks to his more traditional, like focused in, and like, or if he does go big for Elden Ring, because.
And are they going to give him the budget to do that, right?
Yeah.
He did do Civil War.
Well, you figure you got to have enough budget to get Jack Black in there, right? Jack Black
And Sydney Sweeney.
of course. Jack Black as the Tarnished, and Sydney Sweeney as what's her name, Milena or something like that.
Oh man.
Man, that's actually pretty good casting. Jack Black just like in the trailer going, Elden Ring. People losing their shit, throwing popcorn in the theater.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, to be serious again, that is it is a important question to ask, or an interesting question to ask, thinking about the budget, because people really love that game, and it feels like, I mean, I feel like the obvious comparison would be something like a Game of Thrones, just thinking
Right.
of George R.R. Martin's involvement, in Elden Ring.
Or even like when I try to picture an Elden Ring movie, I'm picturing like all of the sweeping landscape shots from Lord of the Rings, and like that kind of grandness to.
Yeah.
And a lot of CG work, right? Because part of what people come to these games for is the like gigantic bosses and stuff, right? Not stuff that you can easily do practically.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's not just Lord of the Rings where, okay, well, we have to put these people in a costume, right? And like, not that
I would expect better CG than what the Hobbit movies had.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope that for every film. But,
you expect it.
The Lord of the Rings in some ways is more grounded than Elden Ring.
Yeah. No, it's like there.
I know that sounds insane to call Lord of the Rings grounded in any way,
but there is a practicality to the filming of Lord of the Rings that would be difficult, like you said, for Elden Ring, where.
Plus, you need the landscape, right? So, like, you're not just shooting the New Zealand countryside, right? You need to actually shoot. You'll have to, in some way, either set dress or do visual effects over the landscape, right? So, it's challenging. I mean, that it feels like a movie that's going to be very expensive to make, or it's a movie they're going to make entirely on sound stages, right? Because this is the sort of movie. This has the vibes of something like The Never-Ending Story, right? Where those are all sort of like manufactured landscapes and everything. And I could see doing it that way and then extending with CG, the environment, the backgrounds.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting. Like, this is actually a video game adaptation that I'm intrigued to see what it looks like versus, Minecraft, where I was like, oh, okay. Or Borderlands or something of that level. Let's see. Well, Mario, this is probably much more up your alley. They're doing a new Street Fighter film, and they have announced that Roman Reigns from the WWE and Jason Momoa from Minecraft
Acting.
are currently in talks to join this new Street Fighter film. So who do we think that they would be playing in a Street Fighter film?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about like Street Fighter lore to know all the characters.
I just know Raul Julia as M. Bison. From the 90s movie. Oh, that's like the extent of my Street Fighter knowledge.
I was going to say, with like the new Street Fighter, you've got like bearded Ryu. You could have them play, like one of them play him. They'd have to like cut their hair though, which I don't, or, wear a wig.
Would Jason Momoa cut his hair?
I don't think either of them would. I feel like that's like
I don't know Roman Reigns.
Roman Reigns also has they look like the same guy.
Yeah. They look very similar to each other, which is kind of weird. Yeah. Like, are they going to play Ryu and Ken?
That's kind of what I thought.
They're originally palette swaps. So do you just have them play each other?
Oh my gosh, yeah, he looks like Momoa.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that's interesting, right? Like, these are different fighting styles, right? That's what the Street Fighter games are about. Mm-hmm. Like, each character has a different fighting style. That's kind of what's interesting. So you have, a professional wrestler and an actor, right? Who, as far as I know, has
done a lot of action movies, but
as far as I know, doesn't have professional like fight training or anything. Like, he didn't come up through MMA or something like that.
Yeah.
And you look at both of them and you go, okay, well, like, you're not, maybe Ryu and Ken don't make any sense because they're doing like karate and stuff, right? Like, so are you playing Blanca because you're just like a big beast?
I was going to say, I mean, like, there's no reason why they couldn't introduce new characters as well, right?
I don't know. That didn't go over that well in the last Mortal Kombat movie.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, I guess. I feel like you obviously have to have like some of your core characters in it, but I could see them potentially just introducing someone new. Twins.
There we go.
I mean, you have Zangief.
I was saying,
like Russian wrestler.
Throwback to Wreck-It Ralph. Could one of them be Zangief and crush men's skulls like Sparrow's egg between thighs?
I mean, Roman Reigns probably makes the most sense for that because he is a professional wrestler, right? So you have a character that's a wrestler. I mean, the other thing to consider is that Street Fighter is in the same universe as Final Fight. So a lot of those Final Fight characters have appeared in Street Fighter games over the years, and vice versa. So maybe you have one of them playing Mike Hagar, the mayor from Final Fight, because he's a professional wrestler who retires and becomes mayor. Which, when that game came out in the arcade, sounded like the most ridiculous ideal possible. A professional wrestler going into politics, and
and then
Jesse Ventura said, "I'm gonna go even bigger than mayor."
Yep.
Then Kane became mayor, and you were just like, okay, never mind.
Oh, Jesse Ventura, what did he?
And we have a WWE Hall of Famer as president currently.
Yep.
So, what has happened to our country? What has happened to our society, culture in general?
Yeah.
Our episode last week was the downfall of Western civilization. I feel like this is even worse.
This is the results of the downfall of Western civilization.
This is the aftermath.
Does that mean we blame Final Fight, or do we blame Jesse Ventura?
I don't know. We have to blame what made Jesse Ventura move in and become even more popular. So we have to blame Predator and the Running Man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, if I was casting a film about fighting, I feel like Roman Reigns is pretty good casting in that. Even if I'm not entirely sure what he'll play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense why the WWE has had so many wrestlers transition, typically initially as action stars, and then move into other areas of acting as well. It's you're already doing a lot of acting to begin with, and you clearly have the ability and the presence of being able to stage some amount of combat as well, at least hand-to-hand combat, and so it makes sense.
And you have that charisma. You have the built-in fan base, right? Which is,
you've got the look in terms of the body as well that you would expect of an action star.
Yeah, and I think people overlook that when you cast a John Cena in something, right? John Cena not only has the name recognition, but he brings his sort of fans along with, or that's the hope, right?
Sure, yeah.
I'll say that's always the hope, is that bring the fans along with them.
So, I'll be interested to see what that cast ends up looking like, and what characters they end up playing in that. Let's see, Shadow Labyrinth. That is the Metroidvania Pac-Man game.
Dark Pac-Man.
Yeah, Dark Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.exe.
They released a new trailer that shows off maze segments that interestingly look like heightened Pac-Man Championship Edition. So if you're not familiar, Pac-Man Championship Edition came out, I don't know, a decade or more ago. And it was their attempt to sort of modernize Pac-Man. It's a fantastic game. They did a second one that's not as good as the original, but it's all neon. It's the one where you can chain ghosts, so you're basically eating 50 ghosts one after another. It's just a very cool way to update Pac-Man, and this looks like they're taking some of that, but also kind of expanding it. So, some of it looked like, you were in much more kind of wide open mazes, so that you were kind of bouncing around. They had like little bounce things that Pac-Man was running into and being shot across the stage. It looks interesting. I don't, I kind of think if you're going to make a Pac-Man game, the idea that you would do something that looked more, at least familiar to traditional Pac-Man fans, probably makes sense to include that sort of gameplay. I'll be interested to see if it's the sort of thing where you can play that mode. You can play a mode based on those mazes separately from the single player game, or maybe that's something that unlocks, after you beat the game or something. I don't know. Interesting to see. That game is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard, and yet the more they show that game, the more I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm interested in this.
I am excited for this game. It's like you said, who thought of this? Whoever did. I just want to have a conversation and know how your brain works, because it's amazing in the craziest way.
Embracer, who we've talked about quite a bit, has been buying up a lot of game properties over the last few years, then selling off some of those game properties. They had taken several of these game properties and different developers and sort of formed new groups with them. Now they are rebranding some of those groups. So the biggest one is Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends. They are rebranding to simply Fellowship Entertainment, which just is like so much of a better name.
Yeah.
The "and Friends" makes me laugh.
Can you imagine the Saluki Gamescast and Friends?
Middle-earth Enterprises, everything Lord of the Rings, and some of those other things over there too.
This feels less like entirely Lord of the Rings focused, right? Like you have that reference in Fellowship, which, I think fans will pick up on easily, but like,
sure,
it doesn't make it as weird for other things to be under this label anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I'll say Fellowship puts you in mind of Lord of the Rings, but it's not weird when you see the word Fellowship somewhere outside of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Middle Earth, if you see that outside of Lord of the Rings, you're like, there's a nerd who wrote this.
Yeah, this is our nerd cast. We're really sticking it to all the nerds as we talk about Lord of the Rings and Lilo and Stitch in depth.
And baseball.
Well, Mario wants to talk about baseball. He's a real cool guy.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, don't you forget it.
Let's see. So under this label will be obviously Lord of the Rings as a property, but game franchises, Kingdom Come Deliverance, Metro, Dead Island, Darksiders, Tomb Raider, and other ones.
So of these Lord of the Rings games, I assume these are the Middle-earth games, like the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War games?
This would
or
be,
not necessarily.
This would be pretty much everything going forward.
Okay.
They still have that.
I was say, does that include Tales of the Shire?
No, because that deal was made before this.
Okay.
So I think Tales of the Shire, that deal was made before they struck this. But pretty much anything that's going to get made going forward using the Lord of the Rings.
Gollum 2.
Embracer, Gollum 2, make it happen.
Yeah, so they're not responsible for Gollum. And
they're like, God damn it.
Missed opportunity there.
No, I'm thinking like the tarnishing our Lord of the Rings name.
But this is also, they own the Lord of the Rings IP at this point,
generally.
right? Like, so like when it comes to film and games and all of that, like they own the IP. So like they, my understanding is, those new Lord of the Rings films that,
like the Tales of the Rohirrim and
the new ones, but they're doing
Andy
those
Serkis
new
one that
they're doing the new live action ones with Andy Serkis, The Search for Gollum, I
Yeah.
think is the title for that. That is going through Embracer, is my understanding. Like Warner Brothers is producing those films, but like they're licensing it from from
I was
Embracer.
gonna say, so then would it be the same thing for like Rings of Power then? That was a deal that was made before this.
Yes,
So
yes.
Amazon can do whatever they want.
Yeah. But, like going forward, they could potentially license this out, the Lord of the Rings IP, to outside developers,
Yeah.
right, to make a game. Sort of in the way that Disney does with Star Wars now. But they also have a bunch of internal studios who, they could have working on a game in that franchise. So that's what they're doing with Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends, which is just such a mouthful. The other group is Coffee Stain and Friends.
What is it with them and friends?
Well, I think it was that, they really saw Lord of the Rings as the crown jewel, right? But they wanted to group all these other ones with it, and Friends was a way to do that. And I think they have realized maybe that sounds stupid.
I just think it's funny. If we had a nickel for every time they did and friends, we'd have 2 nickels, which wouldn't be a lot, but it is kind of weird that it happened twice.
So anyways, this was their indie game publishing label, and they are now spinning that off into an entirely separate company. It's always weird. All these companies start off these indie labels, and then after a few years, it feels like they either shut them down or spin them off. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for big companies to be funding, quote unquote, funding indie games.
Yeah.
The question also is then at that point, are they indie games anymore if they're getting funding that way? Let's see. Xbox and Antstream Arcade have launched retro classics on Game Pass, and this comes with more than 50 Activision games to start with.
I saw this, but did not really look all that much into it. Have you looked any more? Did you look into it at all or download it or anything?
So I did on my PC, and it will not boot up on my PC.
Oh, well, great.
So the company Antstream Arcade, they're the ones that if you go to a Sam's Club, they sell like an arcade cabinet that you can pay a subscription, and it has a bunch of games. I think it comes with some games on there, but then you can subscribe to get more games.
Yeah, I think they had one of theirs was like a free game on Epic 1 week, and so I know I have something from them that I've never looked at.
But my understanding is that maybe this is streaming in some fashion. And so that might be why my computer is having trouble running. My computer, which is running Doom the Dark Ages fine, can't run this retro classics collection. So I don't know what's going on. I might need to uninstall and reinstall it, whatever. Anyways, this seems to be their way of saying, hey, we own a bunch of really old IP, both home and arcade. What do we do with all this? They mentioned bringing some Blizzard classics to this as well. You start thinking about, well, what does that include? Maybe something like the Lost Vikings, something that Blizzard's never going to make a new game of. But, back in their 16-bit days, they were making those sorts of games. This is neat to see Microsoft because they own so much IP at this point to figure out something to do with all of that, even if just make it accessible to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Mario Kart World, we talked a little bit about earlier. There's not a lot to this story. It's just that they have announced that, in an interview, it wasn't like a PR, a press release that they put out. But that game, Mario Kart World, that development for it started as a Switch 1 title. And that basically in development on that game, they figured out that, hey, we can't actually run this game on a Switch 1 at a decent frame rate and include all the features that we want. And so that's when it switched development over to Switch 2. Switch to Switch 2. It switched from Switch 1 to Switch 2. That's not confusing at all.
No, not at all.
We talked last week about Fortnite still not being on the App Store. Guess what? Later that day, it got released onto the App Store. So if you want to play Fortnite, you apparently can on your iPhone again. Ubisoft Milan is hiring up for what they describe as a AAA Rayman game. So Rayman is getting a AAA game, which sounds weird because that's not been a AAA franchise for a very long time.
Has there ever been a 3D Rayman?
Yes, Rayman 2 and 3 were 3D games. Rayman 2 is a very good game at the time.
Yeah,
it's a 3D platform.
I feel like I've heard Rayman 2 as being like pretty well regarded, but I have very little experience with Rayman.
I'll say I feel like it's a series that like I've heard like YouTubers like have nostalgia for, but
so whatever the one that was on the Vita, Rayman Legends, I think.
Yeah,
I know that. I think that might be one of their more recent ones still.
Yeah, there was Legends, and I forget what the other one was called. They did 2 games that were like sort of, you could do 4-player at the same time play. Those are very good games that they put out. Origins, I think was the title.
Okay.
Legends and Origins.
Also, I'm sorry if I cut you off, Alicia.
Oh,
I didn't know if you were done.
No, I was just like that. I think I've heard people talk about it. It's never been on my radar as a AAA game.
I feel like didn't the Rabbids were originally a part of Rayman? Is that correct?
Yes.
I feel like that has more like name recognition today than Rayman might, even just because of the Mario and Rabbids games.
Well, Rayman came from Ubisoft. The original game was is a 2D platformer, like very bright and colorful. One of the first like sort of 32-bit platformers, 2D platformers that you saw. That game came out on the PlayStation. It came out on the Jaguar, but I feel maybe that came out on like an Amiga first or something. I always associate that game, maybe it's a 3DO. I always associate that game as being a very European game.
Which would make sense.
Right. I mean, Michel Ancel made that game, so, I always just associate it as a very European franchise. Rayman 2, is a 3D platformer that came out, I know, at least on the Dreamcast. I think it eventually came to PlayStation and other platforms.
One of them is on the N64.
Yeah, and that was a very good game that played comparatively well to Mario 64 at a time when nobody else was making platformers that could play that well, other than Nintendo, obviously, or Rare. And so, I have a lot of fondness for Rayman, and I like that Legends and Origins, I think, are very fun games. But, the idea of now all of a sudden going and saying, hey, we're going to make a AAA franchise out of this.
Rayman.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
What if Rayman is the newest assassin in the Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, but he has no...
He's got the reach with the arms.
Yeah, but he has no arms.
he can punch so far away, you get punched, you even know who did it.
But can he snap your neck if he has no arms?
I think if he tries hard enough. He's still got hands.
Oh my god!
I don't know what I don't even know what that game looks like. And as a fan, I don't even know what I would want.
That's
out of that.
Also fair.
I mean, it almost has to be a 3D platformer. If you say AAA game,
Watch Dogs 4, but Rayman is the hacker.
I was gonna say Spider-Man 3.
He's able to hack from so far away.
He can be hacking with one hand around the corner
while
he's talking to the security guard.
I was going to say Spider-Man 3, but with Rayman.
Yeah, there you go.
$3 million budget this time.
I mean, would I like to see a new Rayman game? Absolutely. I just don't even know what that is at this point.
Oh, man.
But, well, I guess we'll see.
But to all the aspiring game developers, there you go. There's a job opportunity.
Yeah.
And we'll end here with some fun Randy Pitchford news. Randy Pitchford is the head of Gearbox Entertainment, who in the last year was very, very much into the Borderlands film and had a big hand in it until that film came out and bombed. And then Randy Pitchford very quickly distanced himself from the film. Randy Pitchford, who is probably best known today for leaving a USB drive at a Medieval Knights show. Medieval Knights?
Medieval Times?
Medieval Times, that's what it's called. Leaving a USB drive at a Medieval Times show that was full of pornography. And so, anyways, he is the head of Gearbox Entertainment. He was on social media, on Twitter, or X, as it's sometimes called, before it crashed and was down for several days. And somebody sent him a message and said, hey, Randy, don't let Borderlands 4 be $80. And he responded and said, hey, not my call, which seems entirely fair. He has bosses above him, right? Because they are not an independent publisher anymore. They're owned by 2K/Take-Two. So he doesn't get to make that call. That's entirely fair. It's an entirely fair response. But then Randy continued. And I have his whole statement here that he tweeted, or whatever you call it on X now, and he said...
He wishes he could X this out.
I don't think he does. I don't think Randy cares.
You know what? That's fair.
In which he said, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for the Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. Which, okay, fair. And $80 was a whole lot more money in 1991, and games were often $80 or more dollars. I mean, I often talk about, something like Phantasy Star 4 was $100 when it originally came out.
Yeah,
but this is tone deaf.
I was gonna say the minute that you say if you're a real fan, it's like, oh, I just want to punch you in the face. And it's like you're just like piece of garbage.
I mean, Randy Pitchford obviously is not known for being smart. I think he might actually be very good at leading game development. But in almost everything else that he does, he is constantly putting his foot in his mouth or his USB drive in his mouth and creating all sorts of problems for the people who work with him or the people who employ him. And this just seems like another case of it. Like, this seems like something where if I was working PR, this is what I would tell my students. If I was working PR for Take-Two, I would have them call him up and say, shut up, get off of social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously your experience in PR and teaching PR. I'm just thinking of like, if you're the PR person, like, you're just like, dude, what are you doing?
You're pulling your hair out.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's so frustrating about the PR field. Like, people always want to kind of point fingers at people in PR and be like, oh, you're the problem. Like, look at Elon Musk. There's somebody working in communication for Tesla who is just watching him on a day-to-day basis, and they're pulling their hair out.
Yeah.
They're saying, you have to shut up. You have to stop. Like, you are killing us, and there's nothing I can do. There's no way I can... like the word spin has a negative connotation to it, but there's no way I can pat this over and make it good for the general public.
Yeah.
And a statement like this, even though he's not wrong, technically, there's no way to make this good.
I was going to say, there is something to be said about prioritizing of like, okay, you can spend $80 on a game or skip Starbucks or whatever for a month.
Right.
But also it's just so tone deaf, like you said, to just be like, you'll find a way. I could do it. I could do it. So what do you mean you can't? If you don't do it, you're not a real fan.
Yeah, you're not a real fan. I think that's the part that
Yeah.
really kind of.
It's like if you were to take that sentence off, there's a part of me that, well, that sentence and maybe like the last I found a way to make it happen.
If it was just my local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 91, and when I was working
Wow.
minimum wage.
I don't know, maybe even
Like,
just
that's a
knowing that
little
this is-
less tone deaf.
This
a
is in
little better.
response, but
I mean, if the game were definitely being priced at $80, which the fact that he said this sort of makes me feel like they are going to release this game at $80, because
Yeah.
why else do you say something like this?
Randy Pitcher's like, no, F you, it's going to be $90.
Yeah.
But if your argument is, right, this is $80, we know it's releasing at this price, we want to get ahead of that, and he puts out a comment and says, hey, look, we know this is rough. I was paying $80 for this game back in 1991. This is 30 years later, and these games are significantly bigger and offer significant more hours of entertainment.
Yeah.
And we feel like there is $80 worth of value in here. If you don't, you can wait and buy it. It will eventually go on sale.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a much better response.
Sure.
But like anytime you start saying, if you're a real fan, right? Like that's the sort of stuff like,
Especially when you're the head of that company.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like when you hold weight amongst those fans, right?
Yeah.
right.
It's like I've the whole true fan
Like it's one thing
notion is so
if one of us were to say this, the response is like, well, you're just some guy, right? Or just some girl saying this thing. Like Randy Pitchford, again, as like the head of Gearbox, is going to hold weight amongst those fans, and he should know better.
yeah.
And this is a guy who has very much worked to make himself a public figure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like when they announced Borderlands 4, he is in that video announcing it, right? Like, when they announced it's coming to Switch 2, like he's in that video announcing it, right? Like he could have very easily. There are lots of CEOs of game companies that you don't know them,
Yeah.
Sure.
right? Unless you're just die hard into it and stuff. But like, I feel like he is the sort of person who's like gone out of his way to make, because he wants that.
Yeah.
He wants that public notoriety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a nicer way to say attention.
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yes, it is attention seeking, right? But like, it's a very specific kind of attention seeking, because he is sort of attaching himself to these beloved games
Yeah.
and wanting his face to be the face of the game.
Yeah.
And there are people who aren't doing that in the game industry, or at least not as egregiously, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like I said, we don't need to go in circles, but it's very frustrating. Again, it's you are not just some random dude, some random lady that's saying this. You are the one that's in charge of, again, it might not be your call to make it
Right.
$80, but you are still the one that is like, you are the like lead person that people are going to associate with this game.
Yeah. Like you said, totally valid to be like, hey, not my call that it's $80. But the true fan was so unnecessary.
And the last thing I would just say here, game industry, if you are going to follow suit of Nintendo and raise prices to $80, which we already know Microsoft is going to do with first-party Xbox games. They've already announced that publicly. But if other companies are going to do this, your messaging has to be better,
Yeah.
because the economy is in a bad state right now because of inflation and because of tariff raising of prices on lots of items, everyday items that people need to survive. If you're going to raise prices on your games, people can be somewhat sympathetic to that, but like you need to get better at messaging it.
Yeah. Let the PR people handle it instead of just going off on
Instead
Twitter.
of Randy. Specifically Randy. No Randys allowed. All right. That does it for our news. We are on to our big question. And our big question this week, I think, is kind of a fun one. As we were talking lots about Switch 2 news, obviously Switch 2 launches next week. we thought we would do a top 5 of Switch 2 games. So this is collectively the three of us here trying to figure out what we think are the 5 best games released for the original Switch. So we will say up front, this does not include the online classics. So no Super Mario World, because obviously, but like any other game is fair game. Any sort of like re-release, any sort of remaster, Wii U ports, that sort of stuff. All of those are fair game. So what do we think are the 5 best games? And I guess we'll just start off like taking suggestions, nominees.
So when I first read this question, I was thinking like Switch exclusive games. So I wasn't even thinking like re-releases or all of the like Wii U ports. So
I think I have one on my list that I'd be fine with being an honorable mention. That's not an exclusive.
Like
I think a re-release probably needs to be significantly improved. It can't be like, oh, they just put this old game here, like a barely remaster.
Sure. And so to me, one that I would leave off for that reason, but I would fully understand if y'all want to say no, it deserves to be on there, and it probably does, would be Mario Kart 8. Like because of it being this re-release, even if it's the deluxe and they added a billion new courses, like that was one that I had not necessarily considered. I don't know if those were, so when I first came in, I felt like there were 3 that I was like, they felt very clear. And those 3 to me were Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and Mario Odyssey.
Yeah. I put Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom together as one.
That was the other thing that I could see being very fair, that they kind of share a singular slot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's fair, but I also do understand that logic.
I think it's fair for our purposes because Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel. So it's part of.
I know, Justin, you said you had 2 that you felt like were auto includes. I don't know if those were.
Yeah, you just did my 2.
Okay.
So like Mario Odyssey and then one of the Zelda games, I think belongs on there.
Yeah.
Like if we're doing 5, I can see not including both of those.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how to me, those are 2 of the best franchises ever in video games. And these are arguably the 2 best games out of those franchises.
Yeah.
Or at least like 2 of the best, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's if somebody were saying, I'm buying a Switch, what should I get? I think Odyssey might be the very first game I would recommend, because I think it's the most, I think it's great, but I also think it's more accessible than, so like, to me, that those 2, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, they were on my list as well, and I haven't even played them.
The other one that I kind of then hesitated, I was like, well, maybe there's a 4th one as well, that I think because it was so, I don't know, influential or so, is Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Yeah. I feel like that, I kind of feel about that the way you feel about Mario Kart 8. Of like, it's an Animal Crossing game.
Yeah, and I would argue that it's not the best Animal Crossing game. So like, it's a very good, it's a good game, right? Like,
yeah, I think in terms of iconic Switch games,
so
yes.
I
but
think
best Switch games, I don't know.
And that was going to be one of my questions. Like, by best, what do we mean? Like, what is the metric that we are measuring for best?
I mean, I think probably what you just said about, like, if somebody was buying a Switch, what are the 5 games you would tell them they absolutely need to get with it? I think that's probably a good way to think of it, right? Because these are the 5 games that you should not own. You should not own a Switch without owning these games. And I realize, right, like people have different taste in games and everything. But like if we're talking about somebody who's just a fan of video games, what are the 5 games you would tell them you absolutely need to get with this?
Yeah. The other big ones that I had, and again, I put down Power Wash Sim because I think it plays really well on Switch. It's also not exclusive, and I'm down for that to just be an honorable mention because I don't know how it plays on like PC or any of that. I just think it plays really well on Switch. And then like the three that were kind of like on my list alongside Odyssey and then Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom as one were like Mario Wonder, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and Super Smash Bros. Brawl Ultimate. And I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land also gets a shout out from me, but in terms of, I think that the other ones have to rank higher.
Yeah, y'all can keep talking. I'm trying to write these down so that we have.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, oh, it's a top 5 game on the Switch, but I think one that I would probably strongly recommend and I think I would want to make sure it gets a shout out because it's so easy to just say 5 first party games, but an indie game that is Switch exclusive is Golf Story. I think that game is really good.
That is a good game, Golf Story. And that was like a huge game near the launch of the Switch.
Yeah. The sequel is disappointing. But the original Golf Story, the first one that's a very good game.
So I would argue, there's actually quite a few indie games that if we're talking, they're not necessarily exclusive, but like when you look at something like a Dead Cells, a Celeste,
sure,
a Hades.
I think when I was looking at games, I was like, can I put Celeste on my list? And it's like I said, it's like, I don't know if it's the first way that I played that game. So it's like the first one that comes to mind, but
yeah. Well, and that's kind of my thought on like Power Wash Sim, where I'm like, I know it plays really well on Switch. So even though it's not exclusive to Switch, I wanted to give it honorable mention at least. But
yeah, I mean, I think this is just games on the Switch, right? Like, I think if we want to limit it to just exclusive, I think we probably will lean towards exclusives because, right, like that's what you think of for the Switch. But I don't think it's bad to at least discuss these others. Yeah, I mean, there's part of me that wants to say Metroid Prime Remastered.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and both Prime and Dread were like, I haven't played either of them, but I know you really enjoyed the Prime remaster, and Prime is just like already one of the greatest games ever made. Well, the GameCube one is up there as well, right? Yeah,
I mean, that's it. That Metroid Prime, the original Metroid Prime on the GameCube, was already one of the best games ever made. There's a review, I think it's from EGM, where they describe it at the time as this feels like a game from 3 years in the future that has landed on this system. And it, in a lot of ways, that game still feels, graphically not as much, but it still feels like a game that was way ahead of its time in the way that Mario 64 or Zelda Ocarina of Time did.
Yeah.
And this is the definitive way to play that game because not only did they go back and redo the graphics and that game looks, pretty amazing and runs pretty amazing on here, but they also improved the controls, right? Because that was a game that, there was only one analog stick. There's two, sort of,
yeah.
But there was only one practical analog stick on the GameCube. And so that was not a game where you had dual analog control for what is essentially a first-person shooter. And they fix that in this. And so not only does it play the best, not only does it look the best, but this is the definitive way to play one of the best games ever made. The bad part is, right, this is a remaster.
Yeah.
And so it suffers, I think, very much from the same problem as Mario Kart 8, which was a better looking version of that game, a better playing version of that game, and one that features up to 100 courses, which makes the value of that game amazing.
Because that was sort of my mentality when it came to the 3D All-Stars as well, right? It was just
sure.
It's that's a Switch game, but it's not a Switch game,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is a collection, right? That's essentially the same thing as the the online classics.
Yeah.
Like yes, Mario Galaxy is an amazing game. Mario 64 is an amazing game, right? And then there's a third game on there.
Which is also
Not an amazing
well, I
game.
don't know about that.
I think it's a good game. I don't think it's an amazing game in the way those other two are. That is a game that they should go back and remaster. That is a game they should go back and fix the camera issues, fix the clipping issues. I feel like that's a game they could take, and we were talking about Lilo and Stitch. What games do you remake? I feel like Mario Sunshine is a game that Nintendo should at some point go back and fix. I just wonder if the fact that they haven't yet, I think is probably a sign that they know that game has some fundamental problems that would be more difficult to fix.
Sure. I would be interested in seeing if what a sequel. I'd almost rather see a sequel where they can do essentially all the same things. You can fix whatever those issues are while bringing something new to it. But
it's not a bad game.
No.
It's just not.
It's a bad game for a Mario 3D game, which is like a very high bar. When you're comparing it to every other game in the franchise, it feels not as good as the others.
I mean, if you swap out Mario with Sonic, that's maybe the best Sonic game.
I was going to say it's no
you're
Sonic
not
06. I was going to say it's no Sonic 06, but
Yeah, it is not a blight on the franchise in the way that is on Sonic.
The other game I'd like to add to this list, even as a mention, would be Ring Fit Adventure.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good point, because that's a yeah.
I mean, we could go through all the first-party Nintendo games. So there's Luigi Mansion 3, which is a fantastic game.
Pikmin 4.
Pikmin 4, right? That's a fantastic game. I don't think I would. I'm not a big fan of of some of the other franchises. Maybe not as much.
Yeah.
You're thinking like the Fire Emblems or the Xenoblades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan at all of Xenoblade. But Fire Emblem, I did think Three Houses was a very good game. Like that's a very good Fire Emblem game. And mostly because the whole school storyline stuff is kind of neat. It's like Fire Emblem meets Hogwarts. And that's kind of like a neat thing to do. I don't think it makes the top 5 for me personally.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing about something like Origami King. I think that's a fun game.
Oh, sure.
The combat gets a little stale, but I think that's a great story in that game. But I don't know if it's a top 5 game.
Yeah, I don't feel like any of the Mario RPG style games that they've put out, the Paper Mario, all those sort of games.
Yeah.
I mean, Mario RPG is a great game, and that's a fantastic remake they did.
But it's a remake.
Yeah, it's a remake. I mean, that's basically exactly the 16-bit game, just with better graphics now.
Yeah. Okay.
Same
So-
for 1,000 Year Door.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to talk through some of these just so we're not potentially leaving something off. Like, I feel like maybe there's something obvious that we're still forgetting, we're still leaving off. You two talk, and I'm going to.
I was doing a quick scroll through
I mean, obviously,
games, but-
Mortal Kombat 1.
Just
or
for-
Final Fantasy Strangers of Paradise.
the other big exclusive would be something like Splatoon 3. But I don't know how that's regarded.
I mean, it's regarded very well, but I don't know that I would put it at top 5.
I love Splatoon as like a game to play, but all 3 Splatoons for me have been the same game to some degree. Like they add some things to each one, but like they have always felt more like expansions than entirely new games. Though there are single player games in there that are quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think OJ might have been the only one that played it. Bayonetta 3, is that Switch exclusive?
It is.
But I don't know anything about that one.
Yeah.
I did not play that. I'm looking at a list here. They have like It Takes Two, which is a good game, but I don't think it makes the top 5.
Yeah, I'll say that's one of those that I don't think of Switch as the primary way of playing that game.
Sure. They have Luigi's Mansion 3 on here, which again, if it was my personal top 5, might make it. They have Super Mario Party Jamboree. I think there's an argument you could put one of those Mario Party games on here, but
to me that also feels like Mario Kart. It feels very similar. Of like, if it was a longer list than 5, I would probably say, yeah, let's throw Jamboree on there, because I do think that's the best Mario Party on the Switch. But
this list puts Mario Odyssey at number 14, which is
that's bonkers.
Insanity.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the list from Tech Radar.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to see, is there anything big that we haven't mentioned because we just forgot?
So here's a question. What do you think Metacritic are the top 5 rated games for the Nintendo Switch? If you had to guess.
Tears of the Kingdom.
That's number 4.
That's number 4?
Mm-hmm.
It's Mario Odyssey.
Odyssey's number 2.
I'm guessing it's probably something like a Hades.
Hades is number 9.
Okay.
Mario Wonder?
No. Wonder is 14. So the obvious one you're missing is Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is number 1.
Okay.
Right.
My brain pairs Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Number 5 is the Portal 1 and 2 companion game.
No.
And number 3 is The House in Fata Morgana, Dreams of the Revenants edition, which is a visual novel.
Of course, it was on the tip of my tongue.
Okay, here's an interesting one that I did not have on here. They have Tetris 99.
So I was thinking about all of those 99s, like kind of same thing of like the combo of the F-Zero 99 or the Mario 35. And
I would put those in my brain. I associate those with like the Switch Online stuff. So that for me is associated there, but I'm not opposed to an argument.
Well, because these are original games.
Yeah.
Those are very different than lumping them in with the other things as well.
I would get that better for Mario 35
Sure.
because that is just Super Mario Brothers, like with a multiplayer mechanic slapped onto it.
Yeah.
But I feel like particularly with Tetris 99, that feels like a wholly new game because it's not even really based. There are skins you can do for the Game Boy version and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's not really based on the old Tetris games like the NES or the Game Boy ones.
Okay. So maybe we put Tetris 99 on and...
Well, I think it's worth talking about, at least.
Yeah.
That is the one I would argue for of those. Even though I like Mario 35 and I like F-Zero 99.
Okay. So I think we're all in agreement that Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom are on there.
Almost assuredly.
Do we want to combine the Zeldas or just pick one of them to put on the list?
Either way is fine. I think if we pick one of them, I would pick Breath of the Wild. Even if it is maybe not as good, I feel like it being a launch game is like really impressive.
Yeah, I feel like I like playing Tears of the Kingdom better, but I think that Breath of the Wild might in some ways be the better game. Like as the full experience. I feel like that might be the better game because I feel like I like Tears of the Kingdom because it's built off of Breath of the Wild, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So why don't we just put Breath of the Wild? People can get mad.
Yeah.
We left Tears of the Kingdom off. But like I feel like if we're only doing 5, we want to have 5 kind of different games.
Yeah.
I think it's probably hard to leave Smash Brothers Ultimate
I would agree with that.
off this list.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that is, even though that is in some ways sort of a,
It's an installment, but it's also just like the crowning jewel, the culmination of everything.
yeah, I mean, I realize that is sort of almost like a collection. It's almost like a Mortal Kombat trilogy where we're going to take, there's been several of these games, we're going to take everything that was in them and combine them into one game, right? This is the ultimate form of this. We're bringing back all the past characters and everything. But that's a really well-made game. Like, if you like Smash Brothers, it is hard to argue to play a different version. I know people like Melee quite a bit. I know they're the diehard fans, but it's really difficult to argue making a different version or playing a different version today.
Yeah.
Like, that feels like the ultimate version of that franchise. To the point where we almost have to like think about like where does that franchise go from here?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like there's anywhere else to go. Though I think that same argument can be made about Mario Kart. So we'll put it on the list for now. All right, we need two more.
I would say Legends Arceus one for Pokemon in general, but also for the way that it expanded what a Pokemon game could do. Scarlet and Violet are open world, quote unquote, but not. One, the frame rate and the glitching just makes it impossible to even put them on the list.
Sure.
And two, I think Legends Arceus was the first time in a long time that we got a fresh look at a Pokemon game's possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most interesting Pokemon game of the last decade.
Yeah.
To me, personally. I have not played it. I did play Hey You Pikachu. Is
Let's
that what it's
Go.
called? Let's Go Pikachu. Hey You Pikachu is a different game.
Yeah,
right?
that's a Nintendo
Yeah.
64 game.
Yeah. That's the one where you talk to him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said the only other one I hadn't played if we were going to go for Pokemon would be New Pokemon Snap, but I didn't play that one at all.
New Pokemon Snap.
But I would agree that
I think
Arceus is
an-
doing something
Yeah.
new and different that's more
Yeah.
exciting.
I think New Pokemon Snap is an honorable mention for me. But I think in terms of top 5 best games, Arceus is better.
So I think the other two that I don't know, well, one I know how well it plays, but in terms of those like big indie games would be something like Hollow Knight.
Oh,
I don't know if it's the first game I would recommend to people, but if you are one of those kinds of gamers, it would be one of the first games I would recommend to people.
Yeah. I mean, my problem is, as somebody who played a little of that game, it didn't click for me personally. I know the people who love that game absolutely love it and are fanatical about it. But like personally, I'd rather play that Prince of Persia game.
Sure.
For the same kind of gameplay. But
Yeah.
like, again, I know Hollow Knight's one of those things that just didn't click for me in the way that it does for the people who love it.
Yeah, I guess too. I think of Hollow Knight as a PC game rather than a Switch game. Like, I know it was on Switch, but
I guess, but I mean, I would say that
Yeah.
about any indie game then at that point,
Yeah.
unless it were exclusively on the
I was
Switch.
going to say, what was the one you mentioned at the beginning?
Golf Story.
Golf Story.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, Hades, Dead Cells, Celeste, like these are all games that found huge followings on the Switch, right? Like this was indie games were benefited so much from being on the Switch in a way that I don't feel like any system ever has really before. I mean, maybe Xbox 360 because of Xbox Arcade, like that was really the first generation where we started to get the indie game sort of revolution.
Yeah.
But like, no other system has benefited indie games as much, I don't feel, since then as Switch has benefited indie games and also benefited from indie games because it gave it a constant release of release cadence of new games. Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is at some point we're just picking the top 5 Nintendo games. That sort of makes sense because it is the Switch. And you buy that to play primarily Nintendo games or maybe some of these indie games. Like, I don't feel like anybody is buying the Switch, to play Doom 2016, even though there's apparently a very competent port of that onto the system.
Or even like, I'm not buying a Switch to play Ace Attorney. Great games, but not the reason to buy a Switch.
Yeah. I mean, looking at this list, if I'm trying to think of things that are sort of still on here that kind of stand out and everything, I'm really looking at stuff like Tetris 99, Ring Fit, Metroid Prime, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
Yeah.
Like, those are the 4. Again, I would probably put Luigi's Mansion on here, but I don't think anybody else has the same experience with it.
Yeah. I kind of lean of these 4 just because we have to make choices. I kind of lean Ring Fit or Tetris 99 for number 5.
I think the only thing that hurts Kirby here is that we already have Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Mario Odyssey is that same game to some degree, but better and bigger.
Yeah.
But that is not that's not a criticism of Kirby.
No, but there's similarities there that it doesn't feel like we're dissing Kirby to
in the same way that we're
Mario
leaving Tears of the Kingdom off.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, I would probably lean the same way. I think I might lean slightly. Well, again, maybe it's not necessarily fair because best is subjective, but I think Ring Fit is bringing a whole new type of person to games. And I think in some ways that is one of the best games if you can bring in a new audience. Whereas I really enjoy Tetris. Knowing what Tetris 99 is doing, as awesome as it is, I'm never going to play that. And I think just the competitive nature of something like that is going to hinder a lot of people from even trying it.
Yeah.
Even if it is something as well-known and good as Tetris.
I think one of the problems with Tetris 99 is that, you also at the same time or very soon after it, you had Tetris Effect release. Mm-hmm. Which is another amazing version of Tetris, right? And so to some degree, it's difficult to be like, oh, well, this is, if we were picking the best Tetris of the last console generation, there's actually multiple competitive, because there's also Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Oh, sure.
Which is an amazing game.
Which, shouts out to the people that make Tetris for, still making versions of your game.
Yeah.
Or versions of Tetris that are somehow that good.
Well, I mean, I never would have thought that there would be 3 different Tetris games that got me as excited as these 3 did. Yeah. And talking about figuring out to take an old game, and arguably, one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
And make it feel entirely fresh again.
Yeah.
And they did it in 3 very different ways. I could see Ring Fit Adventure. I don't know that I love it that much, but I will say that much like Wii Fit and, and brain training and brain age, those sorts of things that I see that as something that really excited a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I own Ring Fit, and I also say that it's a pretty good workout. It kind of shocks you when you're playing it because you're like, man, I don't feel like I'm doing that much, and yet I am sore and tired from playing this.
I also think it something like that takes advantage of the very specific abilities of the Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the Wii Sports.
I was going to say, that's exactly the comparison I was about to make.
When it comes to all of the things that it can do, it really maximizes all of those capacities.
Yeah.
Maximizes might be a strong word, but you get the point.
But certainly utilizes all of them.
Like, I don't know any other game that's using the pulse reader or like the heart rate reader type of thing.
Oh,
you know, and so it's like that might not be all that significant, but I also think it in some ways it is.
I think it is.
It's I think that to me is also like you are making the most with this particular console.
I was gonna say that to me feels like that makes it one of the best Switch games, because how do you picture that on another console? I don't.
I mean, even the Switch 2, that game is having trouble getting any sort of port. You have to use original Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
You know, that's a game I'm also shocked they never made a Ring Fit Adventure 2.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I could maybe for the Switch if they can't get a port, there will be some kind of fitness game, first party fitness game that Nintendo releases on the Switch 2, almost guaranteed.
If you own Ring Fit Adventure 1, you already own the Ring, and you own original Switch 1 Joy-Cons, you can use those with the Switch 2.
Okay.
So you can't, that's my understanding. You will be able to still use it. You just can't use the Switch 2 Joy-Cons because they don't fit into the ring.
Gotcha.
Or the leg
sense.
strap. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. And, you know, like I said, Metroid Prime would, again, probably be on my list. But, like, I also, like, get the argument that we're looking at new games.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think we can make an argument about Super Smash Ultimate, but like I do think that game it is such an evolution of that franchise.
I'll say,
it is a new I feel like
it is a new installment.
Right.
Ultimate for whatever reason feels like a newer game than either Metroid Prime or say Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
Well, because I think it is
like,
a new game,
right?
Yeah, it's like if we were talking about 4. Like that's still a Metroid game, but it's a new Metroid game. Ultimate is still a new Super Smash Bros. Game.
All right. So the 5 games we have are Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Super Smash Ultimate, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and Ring Fit Adventure. Let's rank these real quick. I say Ring Fit goes 5th.
That's fair.
Works for me.
Honestly, I think you've already got them in order.
Yeah, I mean, does Pokemon sound fine at 4?
Yeah, I would put it below the other 3.
I don't think Pokemon Legends is as polished as the other 3.
Sure.
So I think that's what
more than fair to say.
Smash Brothers at 3, and then I think it's really Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey.
I was gonna say, I think the fact that we all thought Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild before walking in here gives them the right for 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean that is a what kind of gamer are you is going to determine which one I recommend first. I'd probably recommend Odyssey to the general public first, so I could see that being an argument for it being number 1. But I don't think you can really get either of these wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at some point it becomes like, when these games came out, I ranked Mario Odyssey ahead of Breath of the Wild. And I think it's probably the game I would recommend first to people. But Breath of the Wild, if you're talking about impact, like I don't know that any game over the last 8 years has had a bigger impact on the game industry, really, than Breath of the Wild.
And there's something about it that, like, the first time you like run out of that cave, it's pretty breathtaking, right? And so like
breath.
I did not mean that, but yes. So yeah, I think for sake of accessibility, I would put Odyssey 1, but I wouldn't, like I said, I would have no issue if y'all feel otherwise.
I'm down for Odyssey 1, Breath of the Wild 2, and acknowledging, like we said, there's a very... It's not like there's a big gap between these.
Oh, I was going to put Breath of the Wild 1 and Odyssey 2, so I'm surprised both of you were like Odyssey 1.
I think there's the accessibility component of, like, as someone who has not played either game, Odyssey doesn't intimidate me. Breath of the Wild intimidates me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that ranking. All All right. So your top 5 Nintendo Switch games. At number 5, Ring Fit Adventure.
Definitively objective. You cannot question this
Yes.
list.
Yeah.
I mean, well, why else do people do lists other than, just objective?
Yeah.
Every
truth.
other list is wrong.
I mean, like, get out of
If you have a problem with it, email justin.young@siu.edu.
Get out of here with this post-structuralism crap. This is objective truth. Anyways, Ring Fit Adventure at number 5. At number 4, Pokemon Legends Arceus. At number 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. At number 2, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And at number 1, Super Mario Odyssey. And I think, like, as a top 5 games for a system, that's pretty impressive. I think anybody would be, if you gave somebody a Switch tomorrow with those 5 games pre-installed on it, like, man, like, what an amazing experience if you've never played any of those.
Yeah.
To sit down and, like, just entire, like, worlds and, very distinctive for all the crap Nintendo gets from making, Disney-esque games. Those are very distinctive games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if Super Smash Bros. Does include all the other games to some degree or another. I guess you could say Super Smash Bros. Because it includes all the games, it should be number 1. All right, that does it. Thank you for listening to us this week. Thank you, Mario and Alicia. We will be back for at least one more episode after this week. I don't know exactly when we'll do the episode next week, if we'll do it leading up to the launch, or we may try to do it post-launch of the Switch 2, since the 3 of us at least should be getting a Switch 2 at launch. We'll have to figure that out with scheduling and everything. But anyways, we'll have one more episode before we take our summer hiatus. Until then, have a very good week, play something fun, and we'll be back soon.